What does the name Satoshi Tajiri mean to you? Have you ever heard of it? Exactly! This is not a name that rings out in everyday conversations, not even in the conversations surrounding digital entertainment. If you mention this name to an average video gamer, the response will most likely be a pregnant pause, followed by a blank look or a shrug. Either way, what if I tell you that this is the name of one of the most important creative figures in today's world and the mastermind behind Pokémon? The life story of this guy is so inspirational and motivational that it sounds like a Hollywood movie scenario. A guy who would struggle against persistent adversity, a hero from humble beginnings who stayed true to his passions. Satoshi Tajiri was born in a suburb of Tokyo called Machida. His mother cared for him at home while his dad was a Nissan salesman. As he was living in a comparatively rural chunk of the city, this place was a perfect spot to spend his time on his biggest hobby, catching and collecting bugs. He loved hunting for them in the forests, fields, and ponds, coming up with new ways to catch them, such as beetles. In fact, he was so obsessed with this that his friends started calling him Dr. Bug. In the late 1970s, however, all of the ponds and fields that he loved as a child were paved over by shopping centers and apartment buildings. As he was growing up, he started getting interested in different things, so his passion for insects moved to video games and arcades. Actually, as Japan was experiencing the arcade game boom, the timing for that was perfect. When he was at technical school, Tajiri got into games and he used to spend all his time in arcades. He loved it so much that he began skipping classes to spend more time at the arcades, not something that his parents really appreciated. They were really concerned as they thought he was throwing his future away. He used to play so long on a game called Space Invaders. For that, an arcade boss gave him his very own cabinet as a gift. During those days, as everybody would expect, his studies were suffering, and one of the reasons behind this was his condition known as high-functioning autism. His teachers simply wrote him off as a lazy student, not being able to recognize the telltale signs of Tajiri's condition. Anyway, eventually he hits that like button just like you should if you haven't done so already. No, really. Eventually he graduated from the Tokyo National College of Technology, a 2-year program, so his dad wanted him to be an electrical utility repairman. Certainly something that wasn't his interest. When he got 16 years old, in 1981, Tajiri won a contest sponsored by Nintendo rival Sega, and that was a motivation for him and his friends to create a gaming magazine by the name of Game Freak just a year later. At that moment, it became clear this guy is a video game phenomenon. The magazine was originally written by hand, but as it gained popularity, Tajiri began having it printed professionally. Although he was sowing the seeds in this field for quite some time, nobody could have imagined the success he'll get in the future. Game Freak became quite popular among the gaming crowd, with a typical issue costing $3 and approximately 28 pages long. The key moment in this story is probably his connection with Ken Sugimori, a guy who later designed all the human characters, all of the Pokémon images, and other aspects of the game.
こんにちは。では、ピカチュウを描いてみます。
They teamed up and became a collective of hobbyists, learning the building blocks of game design and video gaming code. As they started learning more and more about the games, they got the idea of making one. They felt that the market might need some improvement. In fact, their ideas later completely changed the market of video games. By first taking apart a Nintendo Entertainment System, Tajiri learned how to write software, so initially the programming language he was using was Family Basic. It didn't take very long for Tajiri to publish his first game, so in 1987, Quinty was already on track. Only 2 years after that, named after his magazine, he officially founded the company Game Freak. Everything else is history. Game Freak and Tajiri continued to develop many titles for companies such as Sega and Nintendo, some of which are Yoshi and Cherry Boy in 1991, Mario and Wario published in 1993, and 1994's Pulseman. You see, you got here to hear only about Pokemon and only to find out that this guy's responsible for all the good moments of our childhood.
Pikachu, get in the ball now!
The earliest creations made by Game Freak had enjoyable titles. They were very colorful but did not reinvent the wheel. Either way, I think these were the days when the company was building momentum, since very soon after this, Tajiri created his biggest project, Pokémon. In fact, this story is pretty interesting. He got a flash of inspiration when Nintendo's latest creation was released. Believe it or not, that was a short black cable that was connected to 2 Game Boys, enabling multiplayer gaming. That was enough for this genius. He shared an idea with Nintendo's team, something that they had never heard before. A game where players would collect small creatures, which they could train among a vast landscape, and after they get to some specific strength, they would battle them. This game would enable players to fight with each other via the Game Boy's link cable or against the computer. Sounds fun, right? To make the game more difficult and more interesting, the game would enable the creatures to evolve into more powerful versions of themselves. Every creature would have a different set of attributes and designs, but based on designs, you could feel his formative obsession with bug hunting. In fact, it was his plan and hope to smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. No, really, in all seriousness now, it was his plan and hope that the enthusiasm he had as a young boy will be passed on to the next generations. But don't forget, this was in the early 90s, and at that time this was almost a mission impossible for the developers, even on high-end video gaming hardware. Luckily, Shigeru Miyamoto, one of Nintendo's rockstar designers, jumped in and saw the potential in such a game. As expected, the development did not go smoothly, but Miyamoto mentored Tajiri all the way to the end. The success required brutal working hours both for Tajiri and his Game Freak staff. Several staff members had to quit since the company's income suffered on this road, but to speed this up, in 1996 he succeeded to release Pokémon Red and Blue in Japan. This was the moment when the real Pokémania started. There you go. His enthusiasm and childhood joy created a brand that sold 10 million copies of the game only in Japan before being exported to America. Pokémon soon became a media mix franchise adapted into a lot of different media: films, games, animated series, soundtracks. Who could even count all of this? It's the third best-selling video game franchise of all time, so no wonder why the fan base is so huge. You might think that the Pokémon fan community is mostly children. No, not at all. In fact, the early purchasers of Alpha Sapphire and Pokémon Omega Ruby were made by teenagers in their 20s. Most of the fans are adults who return to the series since they originally played the games as children. The real fans go so far that they even analyze the best ways to use each Pokémon and what would be their best use of their full potential in competitive battles. Nobody could blame them. Tajiri's story is an inspiration for young people around the world that they should never abandon their dreams and they should never forget what made them happy when they were kids. Surely there will be obstacles on the way to the top, but it's totally worth it to cross them for a triumph like this. And what about you? Have you ever played the game or watched the series? What is your favorite Pokemon? Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.